1 p.m. I'll call the meeting to order. And we will start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of America,
United States of America,
for which it
the
stands,
republic for which it
one
stands, one
nation,
nation,
indivisible,
under God,
liberty and justice for
indivisible.
all.
Liberty and justice for all.
Okay. All right. Everybody has the agenda. Is there a motion to approve or any changes?
Make a motion to approve.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, the motion has been made to approve the agenda and seconded. Is there any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. Okay, the agenda is approved as stated. The approval of the minutes from January 21st. Okay, I have read them originally and they were fine with me. Anyone else have any questions or input?
Motion to approve.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, the motion has been made to approve by Phil, I believe, and the second by Jordan. Is there any discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed say aye. Okay, the motion, the minutes. Okay, is there a question? Okay, the motion to accept the minutes as written has been approved. The next order of business is the petitions. Okay, the first petition is docket number Board of Adjustment 5/2021, the first one. And that is to, I'll turn the page here and find it. I know I saw it somewhere. There it is. Usually it's on the title page.
Are you seeing my screen, Bob?
Is it just a second? Yes, I am, as a matter of fact. I'm too busy looking at my paper. Okay, it's a petition for variance by Ronald and Jane Schritz, and I don't know if the pronunciation is right. And okay, it's coming back to a variance to allow a new dwelling. Okay, it disappeared. 48 feet from the center line of Riverview Drive instead of the required 112 feet, and 5 foot from a side yard setback instead of the required 10 foot pursuant to chapter 10.7.7 parentheses 2 parentheses B and 10.7.7 parentheses 3 of the Winona County zoning ordinance. And let's see, is Lou have this one?
Yes, let me pull his PowerPoint up
Okay.
and get that shared.
All right.
Okay, you should be seeing Lou's presentation now.
Okay.
Okay, yeah, thanks, Bob.
There it is. Okay, hi Lou.
As you stated, this is a front yard setback and a side yard setback variance to allow a new dwelling on a parcel that contains a couple of couple of duplexes on the property as it's proposed. So you can go to the next slide and we can see the mapping exhibits, and you'll get a better idea of what's going on. It's located in Dresbach Township in section 18. And the address is 46937 Riverview Drive. This is the older kind of village part of Dresbach Township along the river there. It's an old platted part of Dresbach Township. Next slide. This is the property showing the properties that sits today. Actually has a couple of duplexes on the southern portion of the property, and then a number of dwelling units on the northern half. You can see the proposed property line. That was actually approved via a variance in 2014. They haven't actually gone forward and recorded a survey for that, but but they could still do that with the variance that was granted in 2014. It is their plan to still do that and split the property. And they would like to retain the southern half of the property for themselves and build a new dwelling on it while managing the 2 duplexes which are currently there. The stated reasons for the split and for the new dwelling is to allow them to transition to retirement and have less to manage on the property. I think it's a bit overwhelming for them at this point, and they're hoping to allow somebody else to come in and manage the northern half while they can concentrate on a smaller portion of the property. Next slide. The petitioners did submit a complete application, including the township acknowledgement form. The township opted not to provide any comments, which is perfectly fine. So other than that, I have not received any additional comments from neighboring property owners. As always, the board should consider all materials and testimony and when making your findings and make findings that support your decision. The staff analysis and draft findings do support granting the variance. But if you do decide to grant the variance, there are a couple of conditions also attached for consideration. And that's with that, I'll end my presentation.
Okay, thank you, Lou. The one question I had, what is the width of the county road right away there? Normally they're 99 feet. Is this one special?
Well, a typical right of way is 66 feet.
No, it's 99.
Well, you got me there then, Bob. You know more than I do, I guess.
On the county road. Because,
a county road?
Yep.
It depends on the county road, Bob.
What?
So in this area, in an old platted area of the county, it's going to be different than out in a rural area, in the country.
So it's we're assuming it's 66 because otherwise they would put their they'd put the proposed house 2 feet within the road right away.
No, yeah, it's not within the road right away. The road right away actually comes. If you look at the sidewalk there, it's about 3 feet beyond the sidewalk.
Okay, just wanted to make clear on that. And what was the other question? Oh, and this is just a technical thing. On page 32, I was wondering why they filled out a Board of Adjustment application to the city of Winona.
That was not supposed to be included in your packet. I thought I had removed that.
Okay. That's fine. I just happened to caught it.
Yeah, I don't know how that got back in there, but
right.
that is a mistake that they made. They had gone online and pulled an application, and it happened to be the city's, not ours.
Okay.
And we remedied that.
Okay, just to let you know I'm watching.
Yeah.
Doing my job. No,
Thanks, Bob.
I was reading that and I thought, oh, okay, that's interesting. I thought it was working for the county here. Okay.
So I got a question for Lou.
Okay, go ahead, Phil.
On the proposed footprint of this new building, what is the distance between that building and the existing building? Is it?
It's approximately 5 feet.
So isn't there a code that has to be followed as far as how close you can build next to another building?
We don't have any standard in our zoning ordinance that would require any kind of separation between structures.
It would just seem awful close if a fire ever started out like.
Yep, we don't have any separation requirements in our ordinance from existing structures. So the one thing that I did want to bring up and is in your staff report, that you have before you is the septic system. And that's really kind of the crux of the issue here on this petition. The petitioners have been working on and known that they've had to replace their septic systems for quite some time, and have been waiting while the Dresbach Township looked at a community sewer system. However, that project ended 3 years ago now, and they decided not to go forward with their community system. So every property owner now is responsible for their own septic system. And the Schritzes do know that they are responsible for that. And they have been working towards getting something done with different designers, but it's a challenging site because of the number of units and how much wastewater has to be treated on the site. And they've had difficulty coming up with a plan. Of course, adding another dwelling won't help this situation. It'll add to the amount of wastewater that's needed to be treated. Further, taxing and the amount of space and the ability for somebody to design a system. So one of the big caveats with all of this that they plan to do here is that they can provide on-site wastewater treatment. Just wanted to point that out and bring that to your attention.
Is a holding tank an acceptable method? I mean, and is it limit to a size or anything?
It can be, but for these types of systems with this many units, the amount of wastewater to be pumped would be quite high and get quite expensive. I don't know if it's very practical to be doing holding tanks for this many units. So
yeah.
And for new dwellings, I'll say that we don't allow holding tanks for new dwellings. So now that they're adding another new one, I think we would want to see on-site soil treatment in some form or another.
Okay, thank you, Lou. Are there any other questions for Lou?
Yeah, so the as far as that
Gordon?
septic goes, they do need to get a permit before they can move forward with this regardless?
Absolutely, yep. There's a septic permit, and we've actually been on site with a couple of different designers to look at soil. So usually we do soil work. We approve the type of septic system that's going to be built there. And then the designer goes back and puts together the forms and applies for the application.
Okay.
Okay, is there any other questions before we open for a public hearing? If not, I'd entertain a motion to open to the public.
I'll make that motion.
Okay, Jordan has made a motion to open the meeting to the public. Is there a second?
I second.
And who was that?
Elizabeth.
Elizabeth.
Sorry, I can't hear what you said.
That did you made the motion or the second to the motion to open it to the public?
Okay, thank
Okay.
you.
That was
Okay.
Elizabeth, I believe.
Elizabeth.
Chair.
I can't, okay. All right, is there any discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye, all those opposed, well, all those opposed say aye. Anybody hear that?
Yeah. So all those in favor, is that what you're going for?
Oh, that what yeah. Well, I did say I'm working too. Okay, all those in favor of the motion say aye.
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 That's why there's deafening silence. All those opposed to the motion say aye. Okay, the hearing, or it's open to the public hearing. Is there anyone wishes to speak to or for or against or any more information in regard to this petition? For the
Mr. Chair,
second
you might
time?
want to ask if the petitioners are present and allow them a
Okay.
chance to speak.
Are the petitioners present? Okay, I'm hearing nothing. All those, okay, is there, for the second time, is there anyone who wishes to speak regarding this petition, favor, against, or more information? For the third time and final time, is there anyone who wishes to speak for or against or regarding information to this petition? If not, I entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
So move.
Okay, there's a motion to close the public, it's Phil. Close the public hearing. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Jordan? Okay, that's one I heard. Okay, motion was made to close the public and seconded to close the public hearing. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed say aye. The public hearing is hereby closed. And
Mr.
open
Chair,
the discussion, yes?
it's Kate Qualley. Can we just inquire of Kelsey to make sure that she's able to hear the proceedings, or does
Okay.
she need you to speak up, or any of us?
Okay, Kelsey,
I
are you
honestly
hearing?
can't really hear anything. I don't know if it'd be easier if I called in instead. I don't know if it's my computer or if it's just
Okay,
too
we can,
loud where I'm at or something, but I'm having a really hard time. So
Yeah, we're hearing you. Yeah, maybe we take a little pause and maybe call in or,
if I need to call in, what specifically should I do for that? I've never done that before.
So you'll need the meeting ID, Kelsey, and the telephone number, which is on the packet. But
Okay.
the number is, if you can hear me,
Yeah.
720-902-7700. And the meeting ID is 149-640-9438. So
Okay.
it might be important to do that quickly before we get to the
Yep.
findings of fact.
Yep. Gonna do it right now.
Yep. Sorry to
Okay.
interrupt, Mr. Chair.
that's fine. Mhm. There we go. Okay, I am going to continue by asking if anyone has any observations or comments and whether we want to go through the findings of fact individually. I assume everybody has read the packet and studied the petition. So you have pretty much an idea of what it's all about. And so is there any comment as to how to proceed? One thing to remember with this lot too is that I-90 back in 1960 or 70 or whatever also took part of this lot with the entrance ramp, onto 61 and 90. And so that's kind of hemmed them in a little bit more too. And they will still be, I think, how many feet from the curb? Also, there's a building, and maybe it's part of this lot, there's a building up the street to the north that is also right essentially on the right of way or very close to it, or the curb. So there's a precedent for it.
What happened?
Yeah, Bob, that one that's right on the sidewalk to the north
Yes,
on the property was an old gas station,
okay.
but it has been converted to residential. So there's a small efficiency unit in that now.
Okay,
I should also say that this is the CD zoning district, community development. And within the CD, setbacks for structures and dwellings are determined by an average of neighboring dwellings in this case that face the same road, so within 250 feet of the existing structure. So I had to take a measure each one and take an average of all of those within 250 feet in order to come up with the setback distance that's included for the variance. So just so you know, that's why it's an odd number for the variance distance from center line.
okay.
But at 48 feet from center line, they weren't going to meet any of the setbacks in that area. So
Okay. Okay, does any, personally, I don't really see any problem with this. Does anybody else? Do we want to go through the findings individually? Or would someone, or I mean, if anybody does have a particular finding that they're concerned about, or would someone wish to make a motion to accept the findings as presented with the conditions?
So moved, Bob.
Okay, Phil has moved to grant the petition as written with the conditions. Is there a second to the motion?
A second,
Okay, who was that?
Elizabeth.
Elizabeth? Okay,
Mhm.
second
Elizabeth,
by Elizabeth. Okay, is there any discussion?
Mr. Chair, do you want to check that Kelsey is on the line in terms of if you're getting to a vote?
Yep. Kelsey, are you hearing us?
I'm good. I'm here. Yep.
Okay, very good.
Thank
Okay,
you.
Thank you.
okay, so the motion has been made and seconded to accept the grant the petition as written here with the conditions. And in the findings of fact are, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Hi.
Hi.
Aye. I think that's unanimous. All those
Aye.
opposed say, okay, all those opposed say aye. Hearing none, okay, it's unanimous that the petition be granted. Now I have to read for the public, as soon as I find it, unless you have it there, here it is. The legal statement that all decisions by the Board of Adjustment in granting variances or in hearing appeals from any administrative order, requirement, decision, or determination shall be final, except that any aggrieved person or persons or any department, board of commission of the jurisdiction or of the state shall have the right to appeal within 30 days, 3-0, after receipt of notice of the decision to the district court in the county in which the land is located on questions of law and fact. Any party that would like to submit an appeal to the decision rendered at the public hearing must do so to the district court. Planning and Environmental Services is not responsible for filing the appeal or obtaining representation by the counsel for the petitioner. Okay, then we are ready to move on to the Board of Adjustment docket number 2, which is right there, which is in its docket number BOA 5/2021, number 2, is a variance by Mark Daly to allow a building site established on a Class 2 soil instead of the required Class 4 and Class 8 soil types pursuant to Chapter 10.4.7, parentheses 6 of the Winona County zoning ordinance. Okay, Eric, do you have a presentation?
Yeah, I guess if we can, load the PowerPoint.
Okay,
give me 1 second. This is the prime soil one.
Okay. Will work. In regards to this, keep in mind there's 2 variance requests on behalf of the petitioner that are somewhat related, but they are inherently different, so that there is noticeable difference in the staff report and the findings and some of the discussion points. This first one, which is number 2, the chapter of the ordinance is cited by the number that Bob just previously read. This is from 10.4.7, number 6 of the Winona County zoning ordinance, which is a performance standard for prime soils and in relationship to building a new house. In this case, the entire acreage is considered prime, therefore anywhere on that property would be encumbered by the prime soil standard that we have in the Winona County ordinance. Next slide. This just briefly touches on the heart of this first request. Petitioner wishes to construct a new home, and it's been identified according to the soil survey. And USDA soil type is a type 2, which is considered prime, both accordingly to the USDA federal classification as well as the Winona County ordinance as being prime. The distinguishing factor with this is that the proposed house would be located in a mature stand of trees and woods that are on the acreage. It's not has been cultivated in the past. It's essentially showing or exhibiting that there's at least probably 40 to 50 plus years of woods that occupy that site. I guess we'll get into that a little bit more with some of the pictures and slides and mapping exhibits too. So we can go on to the next exhibit. This is a GIS map that just shows a rough location. It shows the acreage in the green, and it shows roughly where the proposed house location would be. There's an existing field drive that comes off of County Road 18, which this property is bordered by to the north. The intention would be is to improve that field entrance into a driveway access to serve a potential building site. Next slide. The tan or cream colored exhibit, which you see, which encompasses all the sections and all the property in view on this slide, under soils capability, would be considered prime. You notice this or see this with the townships in Utica and Fremont and St. Charles, where most of the acreage are very conducive for agricultural purposes and are considered prime. The polygon that you see that is green is just a particular soil type. So it was selected to kind of show that the house would reside somewhat in that polygon, and I just singled out that soil type. But for all practical purposes, it shows that the entire acreage is considered prime. This picture is from County Road 18, and this was taken slightly east of the acreage. It's looking, if you look to the left of the road, or what would be south of the road, according to the mapping exhibit, it shows that it's cropland, but then you can see immediately in the center of this photo is the stand of woods that you see on the aerial map, in which the applicant wishes to construct the new house upon. This photo is taken immediately off of County Road 18 at the field entrance. So you can see that the small gap between the county road and the stands of woods, which I think I referenced in the staff report, it's probably very minimal, 100 feet, or if not even that, shows essentially the county road ditch and just a small strip of cropland that the driveway would have to be erected to access the portion of woods for the potential new building site. This photo is from the township road that the property is bordered to the west. I believe this would be considered Mert Road. And this photo is showing, again, off of the road, showing the grassed swales and the drainage areas and wetlands. And if you, this would be on the west side of the woods, and this is looking to the southeast. If you look at that filter strip, you can see that it almost wraps all the way around towards the woods. And as you get further south into the parcel, it is, I would say, wet, and you do see wetland features. So the parcel even though it's considered prime, I wanted to point this out that a good share of the parcel or property is also limited by wetlands and poor drainage and shallow depth to water table and those type of things. So this would be, again, the west side of the parcel. Next picture. This is taken in the exact same place, just now slightly looking more to the north with the County Road 18 looking back to the east. Again, you can see the woods and in relationship to that. What is very, I guess, observant when looking at the elevations and looking at LiDAR, if you see the very tip of the woods to the left there, that's closest to the road, just the elevation. I mean, this photo, I think, kind of matches up with the LiDAR in that in the northeast part of that property, and as you work your way to the south throughout that parcel, the elevation changes by at least 20 feet. So you can see that the very northern tip of the woods is on much higher ground than a considerable balance or rest of that parcel. Next photo, please. This particular image is now north of the subject property. This was taken from the neighbor's driveway, roughly located to the northeast of the building site. But it just kind of shows it the vantage point from the northern property looking along County Road 18 as you see that stand of woods in which the applicant is pursuing the building site. Next exhibit. Again, this is just an aerial. It shows the various soil types, and it kind of matches up with the photos that we just seen. It shows, you know, in the kind of the center western part of the property, it shows that swale that's wet in nature, and then as you even get to the furthest south of that, it shows some wetlands. It shows the configuration of the wooded parcel, and then the soil type is what the polygon again is showing because it was selected. Next slide. This is the LiDAR or the elevation map that I made reference to. On the very top, you can see coming kind of along the County Road 18 next to the parcel number, that is showing a topographical point. And as you go in a southwesterly manner from that first yellow line, you can see where in between there are some small dashed brown lines. Those are actually showing changes of 2-foot contours. So there would be 5 breakpoints in between each of these yellow lines representing a change in elevation of 2 feet. So the elevation differential is 10 feet in between each of these yellow lines. And it just shows kind of the elevation, the drainage, the topography of this stand of woods. It's kind of deceptive looking at it, you know, from a distance or along the road, but you can actually see that this land does have a considerable change in elevation. Next slide. In your packet, you do have a township acknowledgement form in which Utica Township did indicate support for the petition, and I believe that was signed by Supervisor Clifford Thompson. It should note that the applicant is also a township officer. I believe he's the chairman, so that's, you know, he would not be the signature authority on that. I believe he allowed one of the other supervisors in that to give the formal document in this case. So on to the next slide. The Board of Adjustment shall consider all the materials and testimony before making a decision. staff analysis and draft findings that appear in support of this particular variance based on the information that we had looked at in drafting the staff report. Should the Board of Adjustment elect to approve this particular request, staff has recommended 3 conditions be considered as part of that motion. Next slide. And that should do it. And again, we do have another presentation for the second part of this request, a second application. Staff has received written comments from the neighbor, and basically in opposition of the request as submitted. I mean, the feedlot, I don't want to jump ahead. The feedlot request is somewhat of a separate issue too. But, in theory, these could be acted on, and, they could have difference of effect, and that's something we can talk about should the Board of Adjustment have questions as we get into this slightly more. So with that, I will turn it over back to the chair, Mr. Bob Rettig.
Okay, thank you, Eric. Does anyone have any questions for Eric? Any clarifications? Okay, if not, is the petitioner at this meeting, and does the petitioner want to make any presentation? Mark Daly?
I'm here.
Okay, Mark, yeah, state your name and address for the record, and then you feel free to make any comments or presentation you wish.
Yeah, I'm Mark Daly. Address is 18774 Highway 14, Lewiston, Minnesota.
Okay, and then, yeah, go ahead then.
I guess I put it all in there already, but just that I want to put it in the woods there because it is not farmed.
Mark, do you know why it was tilled at one time and not anymore?
I do not know.
Okay, maybe it's slope or something like that.
Yeah.
Okay.
When we bought the land several years ago, it was woods then, and I don't know anything more than that.
Yep. Okay. Does anyone have any questions for Mark before we open to the public?
I guess it's either a question for Mark or Eric, whoever wants to answer it.
Okay, yeah.
The location of this house in this woods, and this kind of crosses over to the next variance that we're going to be hearing, but I mean, is the house can't get located further away from the highway, so to speak, because of the slope of the land?
Yeah, the position of the house was just arbitrarily determined from an aerial map. So in our application material, there was an aerial map that shows the rough approximate location of the house, and that was measured. Moving the house further to the east or for the south, as I mentioned, there is, that showed the break lines as far as elevation. A lot of times planning can overcome those type of elements. Forcing the applicant to re-examine further south or further to the east, that's a question you can, I would say, present to the applicant.
Well, I guess, that's kind of my question. I mean, I haven't walked in that woods, and then maybe to move the house further south would, maybe it gets so steep in there that it isn't practical. I don't know.
It does go, to the south. The land does lay lower to the south. There is a pond in the back there too that has water in it many years. I kind of wanted to stay some distance away from that, just for drainage purposes.
Mhm.
I could move the house somewhat east. Because that ground is a little higher and a little bit further away from the neighbor.
But would it still meet the 1,000-foot setback, or you can't move that far, Mark? I'm just trying to educate myself.
I don't know if moving it east 100 feet or whatever would, I don't think it would, I think it would still be within the 1,000 feet.
Yeah, that's the way it roughly looks.
It'd be closer to 750, I suppose, then if I moved it, to the east a little more.
Mr. Chair?
Yes,
It's
go
Kate-
ahead.
it's Kate Qualley. So this particular variance is about the prime soil aspect of things, not the other variance.
Yep. So, okay,
I have a question. I have a question.
okay, go ahead.
Is this, in terms of the future use of this land, do you anticipate any further construction that you'll need to have? Other than a house?
No. Nope, just the house.
All right, would someone be ready to make a motion to open it to the public?
I make a motion to open to the public.
Okay, Elizabeth has made a motion to open it to the public. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, Jordan has seconded it. Is there any discussion? If not, all those in favor of opening this petition hearing to the public, say aye.
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 All those opposed, say aye. Okay, the hearing is hereby open to the public. Is there anyone who wishes to speak to this petition for, against, or present information? For the second time, is there anyone here at this meeting?
Hello, can you hear me?
Oh, yes, go ahead.
This is Brian Sanders. I'm the
Okay,
neighbor.
Brian. Yep, and for the record, just state your address for the record, Brian.
16962 County Road 18, Utica,
Okay.
Minnesota.
Yep, and go ahead.
All right, and this is to do with the prime soils part of it. If you want to give him a variance to build on prime soils, give him one to build on his home farm. He wants to be more efficient, live on his home farm, give him one over there. It won't affect me. Another part, this woods, you can go 3/4 of the way down that woods and put a house and not have a problem. We farmed that land since the 70s. Or another location, you can go down Burt Road to the southwest corner and build on that piece. It's all prime soil, but it's all prime soil, I guess. That's all I have to say on this part.
Okay, thank you, Brian. Is
You're welcome.
there anyone else that wishes to speak to this petition? For the third and final time, is there anyone else who wishes to speak for or against or add information to this petition? If not, I'd entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
So move.
Okay, Phil. Okay, Phil has moved to close the public hearing. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, Jordan has seconded it. Is there any discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye to close the public hearing.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed say aye. Okay, the public hearing is hereby closed and open to discussion among the board commissioners, members. And questions, answers.
I guess I'm curious, Brian mentioned moving the house to a different section of the property. Is that like more of a lower drainage area as shown in the pictures, or if they moved it further away from his property, is the rest of the prime soils areas just not really buildable? Or do we just not want them to build on those soils?
Well, essentially, it's all prime soil, ironically, even though it's forest. And except you can't build a house in a waterway or a draw, I don't think, because of
Right. That's
water
what I'm
issues,
asking.
right? Even though it's prime soil, and you can't really work it, or I don't think you can drain it with tile without a permit, et cetera, et cetera. So the house location in the forest or woods would not impact any tillable, tilled, I should say, land.
I have
So
a
that-
question.
Go ahead, Elizabeth.
It seems to me that Mr. Sanders' issues are more related to the second part of the request rather than the first part of this request.
Okay,
Because the soil is the soil, it's the same. So,
right, yeah, no, it's a
Yeah.
problem no matter where. And yes, and it's hard to talk one without the other. And the issue behind it is it'd be possible to get the house further away, but it'd be on tilled ground, presently tilled ground. And I can, the other point, well, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, maybe this is for the next part, but Brian mentioned that they'd been tilling that land since the 70s. So is he tilling that or planting on that land, or I'm unclear as to whether the Dailies bought that land from him then, or am I misunderstanding? Or is he talking about his own land? I'm a little confused by that part. He mentioned that he'd been tilling that land since the 70s, and
We've been farming that land since the 70s.
okay.
We rented it from the previous
Okay.
owner.
okay. Who owns it now?
Right.
Dailies.
Okay.
Okay, and now we shouldn't, really should be discussing between the board members.
I guess I was just curious if
Right, no, that's okay, but
the person who's renting the land, which would be Brian, correct? How he fits in regards to the prime soils aspect of where they're building. If it's all prime soils and they're the ones doing the renting and growing on most of the prime soils, I guess my question is, like, are we able to allow him to give up part of his, where he's renting land to grow crops, to put this house in a different location in order to keep his 1,000 square foot distance? I guess was my question. I don't know if that made sense, but Brian's the one that's is the one that's growing the crops, correct? And
No,
renting the land from the Dailies who are wanting to.
no, I think Mark Daly owns the land. So Brian is no longer farming that.
He's no longer farming it. Okay.
Right.
All right.
Yep. Yeah. And just one observation I would make as a long time ago being on the Wilson Town Board and dealing with town roads, I know that people do not usually seek to if they have a choice, to put their, road, their house or farm on a town road, because they're usually get easily snow blocked, muddy, and so on and so forth. So I can certainly understand the issue of putting a house on the blacktop in a road that would be maybe, depending on the township, plowed probably more often, et cetera, for access or emergencies.
Sure.
Yeah, I would add that also, would be the shortest route for a driveway as far as putting a driveway through the tillable part of those prime soils.
Yes, that's, if you would go in another location, the driveway would probably take up a lot of tillable land.
Yeah, and then as far as coming from the township road, you would have to, you know, at the shortest point, have to cross that waterway possibly and, you know, make a restriction there as well.
Okay, and I assume everyone has thoroughly read the findings and the comments by the staff, and I guess you can make a choice of whether you want to go through individual findings, or do we want to vote on the as a whole, as it's stated?
I would make a motion to accept the finding of fact as stated and approve this part
With the, approve the petition
with the conditions.
conditions.
Yes.
Is there a second to that?
I'll second that.
Okay, Jordan has made a motion that we accept the findings and the petition and approve it with the conditions as written. And Phil has seconded it. Okay, is there discussion? Any clarifications or questions? If not, all those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed say aye. Okay, I'm hearing none, so I will say it's unanimous to grant this petition as written and with the conditions. And I will now read, as soon as I find it, the required public statement that all decisions by the Board of Adjustment in granting variances or in hearing appeals from any administrative order, requirement, decision, or determination shall be final, except that any aggrieved person or persons or any department, board, or commission of the jurisdiction or of the state shall have the right to appeal within 30 days after receipt of the notice of the decision to the district court in the county in which this land is located on questions of law and fact. Any party that would like to submit an appeal to the decision rendered at the public hearing must do so to the district court. Planning and Environmental Services is not responsible for filing the appeal or obtaining representation by counsel for the petitioner. And then we will move on to the, as soon as we see it here, the docket number BOA 5/2021-2 also.
Mr. Chair, sorry about that. We have a little error there. That should say 03.
03, yeah, I just noticed that.
Yes, sorry.
And when I originally read it, I didn't catch it because, yeah, it's supposed to be 3.
We caught it
Okay.
later, but
Okay.
yes, it would be 03. Sorry about that.
Okay, this is a request by Mark Daly for a variance to allow a building site to be established from a registered feedlot consisting of more than 50 animal units at, it disappeared, 650-foot distance from a feedlot instead of the required 1,000 feet pursuant to chapter 10.4.4 parentheses 5 and C and chapter 8.5.1 parentheses 1 parentheses C of the Winona County Ordinance. And Eric, do you have more to present?
Yep. Okay. Again, the second part of this request is specific to the footprint of the dwelling. And Bob, you read the applicable sections of the ordinance that this applies to. It pulls from a couple of different chapters in the ordinance. The variance that you just granted, since the land was applied for, could be universally applied to anywhere on that property. However, this one is now much more sensitive to the footprint in the site plan that was submitted based on a specific locked-in distance. So some of the points that I'm going to cover are the main considerations that the Board of Adjustment should consider in evaluating this as it relates to that. Next slide. construct a new house, if there's a feedlot within the vicinity, we have, in 2011, Winona County changed our zoning ordinance to have a staggered approach as far as what the applicable feedlot setback is that applies. In this case, based on feedlot registration numbers and the numbers that have historically been on the neighboring property, it was very clear that we're dealing with a site that is slightly over 50 animal units. Thus, 1,000-foot setback is the applicable setback for any new houses that would be located within the perimeters of the feedlot boundary of that neighboring property. And what you see on the slide is verbatim according to the ordinance. Again, the site plan is showing that from existing conditions in which staff is obligated to observe and use when we go to notification and applying the appropriate setback. For the best information that we have available is from the site plan that was submitted by the applicant, and kind of this GIS map that staff did to kind of illustrate that we roughly had 650 feet from that southeastern corner of that open lot of the feedlot across the road. Keep in mind, that with the facility that you see on this, and maybe we can get into the photos, maybe that would probably be the appropriate time to comment on it. You do also see the feedlot pit in the distance, as well as other feedlot buildings that are on the GIS image. But at this point, based on existing conditions and what was represented by the applicant, we roughly came up with 650 feet as the distance that this would be applied for. Okay, again, the feedlot owned by Mr. Brian Sanders does contain over 50 animal units. It was 60.8 animal units at the time of the staff report, which then refers to 1,000-foot setback is the applicable setback according to our ordinance. This photo is taken roughly at the intersection of County Road 18 that kind of wraps around in a corner fashion and then goes to the north. And then also you can see right at this entrance is the township road that connects to it, Burt Road, which then goes to the south. So this is just showing a view of the facility there at the corner at its current state. Next slide. This picture is taken on the neighboring property, Mr. Sanders' property, and it's roughly, you can see the woods. It's looking to the south, and it's looking at the Daly property in the general direction of where the new house would be straight ahead in those woods. Where the gravity boxes are parked, and talking with the neighbor, this general area is of a concern due to if the neighbor upgrades the facility, either as far as housing for animals, or the manure handling facility like the pit. The general consensus is that those improvements would occur in this area. Therefore, those potential areas for feedlot improvement would actually be much closer to Mr. Daly's proposed house location should this variance be approved, and therefore there is concerns that have been voiced by the feedlot operator in this case. Next slide. This view was taken in the same location as the one you just previously seen, except we're looking back at the west. You can see the fenced area immediately straight ahead is where the existing manure pit is, and you see the open lot, the open face building that is for animal housing. And then as you look more to the left or to the center, you see the old barn and the silo where the existing open lot is too. So that this is just showing the nature of the existing operation there, and roughly standing where, like, if there was improvements made, the neighbor would potentially be in this general location with any type of future improvements that he would make. Next slide. In looking at the applicant's findings, staff does agree that, based on the soils, there is a lot of wet soils that are downhill. And obviously the upper slope, the closest distance to the county road, which is a paved road, the nature of the existing woodlands were all factors that he considered in pursuing this as a building site. Next slide. Again, the department has received a township acknowledgement form that indicated support for the petition and signed by one of the supervisors, Clifford Thompson. And again, staff has received written opposition from the feedlot operator, Mr. Sanders, and I believe that was sent to the Board of Adjustment when we received it, and hopefully everybody has had a chance to receive that information and has read that. And if you have any questions, you could direct that to the applicant or the feedlot operator in this case too for further clarification. And with that, I will turn the meeting back over to Chairman Rettig.
Okay, does anyone have any questions for Eric regarding the details?
Yeah, I have one, Bob.
Okay, go ahead.
You're determining the 650 feet, Eric, from the corner of what looks like a combined feedlot, but yet
Open lot. Yeah, we took it from a corner post of an open lot where there's not vegetative cover being maintained. That means there's a concentration of animals, that it's not pasture. It's part of the open lot of the feedlot.
So where that manure pit is located and fenced in, that's not considered feedlot?
The pit is, again, but you do see a grass buffer that surrounds it. So actually, if you measure from the closest part of the liquid manure basin, it's actually slightly further away than the corner post of the open lot. And we have to go by whatever the closest distance is, so that, but it is a factor, yes.
If this variance was granted to Mr. Daly, and down the road Mr. Sanders wants to improve or add on to that lot, he would be triggering a variance then?
Yeah, and fortunately, the improvements, if they were made, there's really no way to cut it other than you would now have a new house that's 650 feet away. And if Mr. Sanders put up another basically open-faced animal shelter or fenced enclosure or some other type of manure handling facility, there'd be no doubt that it would be closer than the 650 feet. And to Mr. Daly's proposed new house, if permitted. Therefore, the neighbor would be obligated to apply for a variance before he could make those improvements to account for that change in distance.
And if Mr. Daly is the owner of that new house at the time, if and when Mr. Sanders would want to do something, he could object to that?
Oh, very much so.
That sums it up.
Thank you, Eric.
Is there any way, I have a question. Is there any way that in the conditions that that Okay, let me back up a minute. At this point, Mr. Daly is okay with 650 feet between him and the manure pile. And if Mr. Sanders then does move his work to the, so that it's closer, is there some way in the recommendations to Mr. Daly that Mr. Sanders can not be restricted?
You want to answer that, Eric?
Well,
Or that might be one for Stephanie.
yeah, you can't, it's very difficult to place conditions that are basically prorated for a future event that hasn't revealed itself. I think legally you just can't do that. It becomes problematic. You know, we've touched on this throughout the years of having a feedlot ordinance and feedlot setbacks. You know, a lot of it is just, comes down to, you know, working with your neighbor and seeing what may work. So you form consensus, but this action that you're taking falls under a very much black and white arena. It is either it is or it isn't. And, you know, other than that, I'll turn it over to Stephanie if she has comments.
I would advise against limiting a future property owner's legal rights to provide input on projects. I think that would be grounds for future problems.
Of course, we already have grounds for future problems, but why is this petition actually being presented to us if it's so it's clear that it can't be granted? Why is it even being presented? Because if it's so clear. So I would say by the very fact that we're asking the board members to consider this means that there is a possibility of granting it. So I just want to say that. And then are there any other comments before we open it to the public?
Yeah, I had a question.
Yeah, Gordon, go ahead.
If Mr. Sanders were to expand in a different direction, would that still, if he was going the opposite way, would that still
No.
trigger a variance for him?
No.
No,
It'd
it wouldn't.
only be a scenario that represents a closer setback distance than what the established baseline is.
Okay.
Okay. Does the petitioner wish to present any more information at this time on this particular petition? Mark?
So I've grown up on a farm all my life and next to a feedlot, and it does not bother me to be next to a feedlot. I would have no problems with Brian adding on to his existing site or feedlot.
Mark, there was something written about granting easement for sound and smell, I believe.
Yep.
Is there a way to grant an easement to Brian to expand? I mean, and I understand what Stephanie here, but is there a way to legally or between, and that would probably be between the individuals, which would be a limit, but to grant an easement, you know, legally documented that he can expand to the east, north of the, and on his land north of the county road, as far as he wants. And Eric, one question: if well, I suppose it'd be more like a turkey building or something that's totally confined is still feedlot, right?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Hog and
Yeah.
poultry. Yeah.
Inside or
The
outside.
building.
Yep.
Yep.
Do you want me to tackle your easement question?
I don't know if we want to tackle it yet.
Okay. I'll keep it in mind for the discussion later then.
Yes. Okay. Okay, Mark. Okay, Mark. If that's all you have, then we will we will take a vote to open it to the public. I would entertain a motion to open it to the public.
I'll make that motion.
Okay, Jordan has made a motion to open to the hearing to the public. Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
And who was that?
Elizabeth.
Elizabeth?
Yeah.
Okay, the motion is made and seconded to open the meeting to the public. Any discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye.
All right.
Aye.
All those opposed, say aye. Okay, the meeting is hereby open to the public. Is there anyone who wishes to speak for or against or add information or comments regarding this petition?
Yes, this is Brian Sanders
Yep,
again.
go ahead, Brian.
I already have an existing farm. My place is already here. Why should I have to go in the future to get a variance from a new house that's gonna be built? Why do I gotta be affected? The laws, where is it? The feedlot setback requirement is intended to reduce conflicts and nuisances that arise between the residential use and livestock facilities. So if he builds a house there, he sells it to somebody else, I'm gonna be fighting. I'm gonna be fighting the rest of my life if I wanna grow my farm. Why? This shouldn't even been brought to the board. Anybody
Okay,
got any questions for me? I'm kind of upset.
okay, does anybody have any questions for Brian? That's, yeah, Brian, that's precisely the issue, the problem. So, okay, is there anyone else who wishes to speak for or against regarding this petition?
Oh, and you guys got my comments, right?
Great,
And read
yeah,
them?
did everybody get those and read them?
Yes.
They were sent
Okay.
out? Yes,
Thank you.
yep, we have them, yep. Thank you, Brian. Okay, is there anyone else, this will be the official second time, who wishes to speak for or against this petition or add anything? Okay, for the third and final time, is there anyone who wishes to speak for or against this petition about Mark Daly's requesting a exceptions to the 1,000-foot setback for a feedlot? If not, I will entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
I so move.
Okay,
Second.
okay, the motion's been made and seconded to close the public hearing. Any discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, say aye. Okay, the meeting is officially closed to the public. Commissioners may ask specific questions of the petitioner or staff for clarification, however. Okay, carry on, everybody.
I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
I guess this is to Eric. Do you think that the position of the house, the location of the house in terms of the contour and the quality of the land doesn't make any difference, I guess. But do you feel really confident that everything has been exhausted, that there can't be another look at it? And then the other thing I have in relation to that is if Mr. Sanders has worked that land in prior years and knows it, is there a place he would say would be that the house could be placed in such a way that it wouldn't affect either party? Mr. Daly would still have a location that was satisfactory to build on, and Mr. Sanders would have the 1,000-foot. I just wondered if there's some way that there could be some flexibility around that.
Okay, just a couple points that I've heard. First of all, the staff report, it does have, you can see the very first one, the findings of fact. We do have conflict or a negative finding based on that. I do believe the applicant has demonstrated that in exception to the feedlot setback, that the general area that was selected probably does represent the best building site. With that being said, I don't believe all options have been exhausted to get further away. In fact, I think now that, you know, we've offered a variance to the prime soils, additional opportunity has presented itself to the applicant to pursue that or to actually look at that. You also did hear comments from the neighboring property owner that in relationship to farming that, why couldn't it be pursued down in the southwestern corner in the tillable and the cultivated field that's not wet next to the township road in the very south western portion of that. You know, with that being said, you know, the setback is, if they can, you know, meet 1,000-foot setback, the prime soil variance being granted, this application then becomes a permitted use. That means the applicant could come in the door and apply for the septic and the zoning permit, and we can issue that over the counter because this is 80 acres or more. It doesn't require the conditional use permitting like the non-farm dwellings or the less than 40 acres, which our planning commission sees on a very regular basis. You know, so I don't know if that answers your question, but it's just, anybody's got a right to apply for a variance. I mean, we just can't say that, well, why did this application come forward? Anybody as a property owner in Winona County can make an application to seek relief from the Board of Adjustment. So
Okay.
we have to work through the staff report the best we can with what we have. So.
And of course, Mr.
Okay.
Chair, we don't speculate too much about what, you know, could happen and so on. You know, staff compares the zoning ordinance and the comprehensive plan to the request of petitioners.
Yep. It was kind of a rhetorical question to myself, but okay. Do you have a line where the 1,000-foot would swing through the Daly's property? I don't know if you could bring up one of the aerials. Could you approximate?
Yeah,
Would it pretty much exclude the woods?
Yeah, we could, if you could get the beacon up and show hypothetically, you know, in the middle of where, you know, like where that picture was where the gravity boxes were, you know, just to kind of roughly show where 1,000 feet, that might be a good tool just for the Board of Adjustment to see what that radius would actually look like.
Because, but at 650, you have to go almost another block to meet it in the woods, and that'd be down slope and probably pretty near where it's wet.
Yeah, I was measuring it just on Google Maps measuring tool, and it looks like on the eastern end it would be all the way out of the edge of the little finger of woods that sticks out.
Yeah.
And then on the southern portion, it would be, you know, pretty near the end there.
So it's, yeah.
One thing I'd add too, on all the GIS maps, there's a little scale bar in the corner of those maps, and you can actually just scale it on paper, and you can, you know, like the first one that shows the aerial maps that are in the staff report, that's 482 feet. So if you could, you know, more than double that, that would give you a pretty good bar to kind of just show how that hits on the landscape here. You know, this was kind of the one example. You know, there's like a little scale bar.
Oh, yeah, right.
Maps here.
Yeah. Okay, the bottom line or the gist of the question here really is Brian Sanders' future ability to expand. Eric, what cattle are on there now? Is this dairy, heifers, beef?
Beef cow calf replacement.
Okay. Not that it makes any difference.
The only thing that I would add to this, Bob, is Mr. Daly could meet the 1,000-foot setback today with the existing feedlot, but it still could hamstring Mr. Sanders from
In the future.
getting his feedlot bigger because it'll encroach on that 1,000-foot setback, and he still would have to trigger a variance in order to do that.
So, yeah, so in other words, if somebody wanted to be cantankerous, they could build a house just outside the 1,000-foot, and yet it could curtail anybody's future expansion, and there wouldn't be any recourse except the variance, and so maybe some compromise would be acceptable.
I guess that's what I would hope for, is that they could see if the possibility of some kind of compromise, because it's not good to have issues. They go on for years, and if they could talk together and figure out something that would be more acceptable to.
Well, let's put it. Let's also put it this way: if nobody objected to it, can the board still grant the variance? Say the neighbor didn't complain, you still couldn't. If the neighbor said, "Fine, I don't have any plans," you still really couldn't grant the variance.
So, Mr. Chair,
Yes.
the Board of Adjustment would have to go through the findings of facts one by one and review them and make new findings if the findings differ from staff's best attempt to interpret the petition against the zoning ordinance.
Or at least simply review that first finding. I believe that's the only one that's not met. So if there's a different take that you have, a different finding you would rather make on number one that would change it to being met, that's how that could be addressed. But you'd have to provide the factual basis for how you believe it is in harmony with the intent and purpose of the ordinance.
Stephanie, can a court look at findings, and I think there's a precedent for this, not the court looking at it, but where it appears that the Board of Adjustment in county in Wisconsin or somewhere, where they obviously didn't follow what the findings or find out the way they did and granted the variance that shouldn't have been granted. Can the court say the individuals, the Board of Adjustment, you just totally wrong on how you voted?
That's very, very difficult. There is a lot of deference given to the Board of Adjustment. Where you might run into problems is if you simply said, change it to the variance request is in harmony with the intent and purpose of the ordinance, and then you didn't address what facts in the record support that finding. So if you're going to change the actual finding, you have to change the facts behind it as well. But as long as there's something in the record that supports your decision, courts generally defer to that decision.
Okie dokie.
Mr. Chair, sorry to interrupt.
Go ahead.
Did you want staff to show that map that Board of Adjustment member Hubline requested? Because that would be available to the Board of Adjustment if you so wish.
Can you put it up or?
Megan Cabley, I think, can do that now.
Okay, and show a line.
Mm-hmm.
And take it right up to the road. How far is that? How far is that from the line right there?
Megan, this is Eric. Maybe if you can make out where the pit is, and you can see there is a driveway that comes off of 18 to Mr. Sanders to the north. If you could just get maybe the set off, just go off to the east on the other end of this field, go up a little bit more, and then, or off to the kind of up in that little field, just kind of almost in the same line as where the pit is, or a little bit more to the east, a little bit more to the east, a little bit more to, and then just the hair south. And I think that would do, just show maybe, or maybe yeah, that would show, 1,000 feet will still chew
Okay.
up a good part of that. So
Yep.
it does become a,
Take it around to the east on the 18. And then 1,000 feet from the pit, if that's the closest. Can you start from the pit? Is that the closest, Eric? There, and then take it down in a straight line to the east towards where it intersects with 18.
The dark pit.
Yeah, the dark right there. Yep. And then take it at an angle to the east, or it doesn't matter. Yeah, then right on 18. No, the other. Go to the east, to the right. There you go. Now go 18 to 1,000 feet. Okay, so Mark could build his house right there, right? That the prime soil is granted.
yeah,
Mhm.
Okay. So he could right now with no problem build it there. Without any, any agreement. And so anything to the north and east and Brian's would be off limits for him, right? For a feedlot.
What if you came in to where that curve is in the woodlot? If you came toward the woodlot more, yeah, what would that be? No, over here, yeah, there.
I think I'm saying is if Mark builds his house right there, the 1,000 feet away, he's 1 foot further than 1,000 feet away, then what does that do to Brian's future plans for that field?
Well, he's going to farm around a house rather than trees.
Yeah, I know that, but I was just wondering what it's going to do to Brian Sanders' ability to expand. Because then the house is established there, it's 1,000 feet away, but if he comes any closer, he's going to have to get.
I guess that's my whole point about
Right.
this, Robert, is no matter, it's hypothetical. We're assuming the Sanders farm has the potential to grow.
Right.
No matter where Mark puts the house, it could trigger a variance. So, I guess I'm just really uncomfortable granting somebody a variance only to assure that the other guy is going to have to meet the criteria of a
Yep.
variance down the road.
But I'm saying if people didn't want to cooperate, the house could right now, it's been granted, he could build that house on 18, right where that line ends, and he's out of the 1,000 foot.
Right, he wouldn't need even the variance.
Right, but we granted the prime soil, so he can build there, but then Brian has no recourse in the future to expand closer to that house, because he's, what I'm saying, in other words, is, and I don't know how you'd compromise, but, I detect, other issues here, but if somebody wants to be obstinate, they could build a house right there, and there's nothing, right now, there's nothing Brian can do about it. Whereas if there was some kind of and I understand the problem, some kind of agreement, then he could have that whole area to expand all the way to his line along 18. But if Mark builds his house right at 1,000 feet on 18, then he pretty much, and we can't give a variance for that, for him to get closer to that house. So that, and he's free to do that. So that excludes all Brian's, opportunities to expand. And it'd be perfectly legal because he's 1,000 feet away. And so I'm saying is, how do we compromise here to make it possible? And if it's not possible, then, because I like the idea of the house in the woods. It's not in tillable ground. It's their land. They bought it fair and square. Maybe somebody else wanted to buy it, but they didn't. And so, and I guess if it comes before if the very fact that it can come before the board, And also, anything the board does is not a precedent for anything else. Anything past or in the future, anything the board does on this is not a precedent. And also, I also look at it as, and I think you can interpret this as whether it's in the whole comprehensive plan, and we can get, you know, what do you call good on this? Well, you're encouraging a farmer to keep on farming. This is a farmhouse. And you're with an agreement, you're allowing the one across the road to expand. And so it really is, other than hard feelings between individuals, it's you know, impossible. So having said that, let's go to findings 1 and look at it. If everybody can find that.
Yeah.
And this is the staff findings as not in harmony with the intent and purpose of the ordinance. Is this the whole county ordinance?
This is excerpted from the Ag and Resource Conservation Zoning District of the Winona County Zoning Ordinance, Mr. Chair.
Yep. So I understand it. I mean, it is generally, and that's why you have variances, it is generally designed to enhance farming. And this is not a, I don't understand, well, it doesn't matter how the house is being built, but essentially there's a farmer building the house and he has a right to not live on where, you know, I mean, well, he owns this land, so he has a right to, certainly has a right to use his property that way. And so it seems like with the finding, it could be considered to be in compliance with the general intent and purpose. It's not a house that's intended to be built and sold and speculation and all this, even though that's not relevant. And it is, I guess I'll just read it so everybody can think while I'm reading it. The Agriculture and Resource Conservation Zoning District is established with the purpose of protecting the working agricultural landscape of Winona County as a means to ensure the continued viability of this resource. The proposal would allow the owner to homestead an existing farm parcel by placing a new dwelling in a location best suited geographically on the acreage. However, any expansion to the nearby existing feedlot would likely need to be in the direction of, direction of the proposed new dwelling. The feedlot setback requirement is intended to reduce conflicts and nuisances that arise between residential uses and livestock facilities. And that's the core of it. The intent, and I guess I'd also, and everything can be, but I also look at the impact of the size of the farm, you know, whether it's a mega farm or it's right, you know, a few animals less, and we wouldn't be here talking about this. You know, it's very borderline. This is actually very typical of the exercises Stephanie gave to us to try and figure out in our training session. Exactly. In fact, I think she got it from this. But, so, what is everyone's thoughts on this?
I mean, it just seems like the effect would be the same whether it was at 650 feet or 1,001 feet.
Yeah. I mean, that's, what does anyone else think?
Well, I think it boils down to, if we grant this variance, we are pretty much guaranteeing the Sanders that they're going to have to get a variance in order to expand, which.
But also, if we don't grant it, they would still need to get a variance to expand in that direction if he built a house at 1,000 feet.
Right, that's what I'm saying. Yep. So it behooves the parties, and I don't know how you would do this legally, to, I agree with Phil. I don't think I'd be in favor of doing this without an agreement, some kind of legal binding agreement, which is very difficult to do, that Brian Sanders has the right to expand. I do not want him to have to look for a variance in the future.
Well, you mentioned something about an easement, Robert.
Yeah, it was mentioned somewhere that Mark had granted an easement for odor or smell or something. In other words, that if that was a problem, that he wouldn't complain. But that's probably just verbal or something. But
Mr. Chair, if I might.
yes, go ahead, Stephanie.
So the problem with an easement is a right over someone else's property, which means with the odors and the smells and particulates, things like that, that the easement relates to like things drifting over your neighbor's property. An easement wouldn't apply to basically agreeing that you won't object if your neighbor uses their property. I'm not sure what kind of a land mechanism could be done for that. I'm not aware of anything. So I'm not sure that that's something that can be accomplished as part of this. I also, again, have issue with restricting future rights that aren't something we can legally do within the variance.
Can individuals agree?
Individuals can absolutely agree, and
Yeah,
it sounds
Brian.
like Mr. Sanders and Mr. Daly probably would be able to reach that agreement. My concern is with future landholders on either side.
Right. Can can the variance be issued with conditions that, and I know you're going to say what you're going to say, but with that conditions, that the variance isn't issued unless those conditions are met?
I'm going to say probably not. I wouldn't recommend putting a condition like that in there, just because what you're basically asking is for them to agree that there will never be an objection in the future. There might be a wide variety of reasons for an objection in the future. It may have nothing to do with anything that we've talked about here. So I have concerns about restricting the right to legally object to something in the future if there's a valid basis to do that.
Right. Can if the individuals, let's say, had the time to come to some agreement, could that be considered in the future if this hearing would be postponed? I mean, this variance would be postponed?
If they can work out something between them that addresses the concerns and that would be going forward, then they can always bring that back. But I think what this body needs to do at this point is determine whether or not the request is in harmony with the intent and purpose of the ordinance. If the answer is yes, then you can grant it. If it's no, you can't. Whether or not there's an external agreement as far as objecting to a future speculative expansion of a feedlot, I don't know that that necessarily has anything to do with the specific criteria, which is what your role is in all of this at this point.
So in other words, there's no way to, I mean, I'm just paraphrasing, there's no way the BOA can grant this variance.
If you believe that it's in harmony with the intent and purpose of the ordinance, and you can give me reasons why that is, then you can grant it. But based on the information before us, based on what we had at the time that the findings of fact were drafted, this is where it came out. If you disagree with that and you think there's something that can be changed to make it in harmony or to note why it would be in harmony, then we can change that for you.
Okay, well, yeah, not to swing, but personally, I think it can be seen as in harmony, but only if Brian Sanders' ability to expand is not inhibited in any way that would require him any legal work or variance request. So having said that, what are our options?
Well, I think what she's telling us is we have no legal way of doing that, Bob. So I mean, I think when you just stop and you read this, you're going to have a dwelling in a location that a potential feedlot expansion isn't going to happen unless if you get another variance.
Okay, so essentially now, Mark can build a house anywhere on the prime side as long as he's out of the 1,000-foot radius. And so is everybody ready to take a vote on the finding number 1?
Now, I have one more question.
Okay, go ahead, Elizabeth.
This is for Stephanie again. If the variance is granted, even though the finding says it is not in harmony, are we leaving ourselves open to a legal challenge on that?
Yes, you are, and you will lose in court. With a variance, all criteria have to be met in order to grant the variance. So if the finding is not met and you grant it, then it could be overturned at the court level.
I had some great thought, but I lost it.
So,
Somebody else can talk for a while.
yeah, would the findings of fact be different for the first one here if the setback was 2,000 feet or something? It just seems sort of arbitrary now that he can go at 1,000 feet. I don't understand what the difference is between 1,000 and 650, being that it would require any expansion of the neighbor would require a variance either way.
It's essentially what the ones drafting it chose, and I guess that's just the number. And and then it could be changed, by the county board, in zoning and all that.
Mr. Chair?
Go
Just
ahead,
a quick
Katie.
point of clarification from staff. Since we don't write zoning ordinances,
Right.
and they go through the planning commission and the county board, staff does not arbitrarily choose numbers. We have
Right.
to work with what we are given, and it isn't always a match up with what we might recommend at some point. But at this point, that's what we have in the law.
Right.
Sorry, I didn't mean to say the number was arbitrary.
No, it's,
so much as
no worries.
just the
Just wanted to pop in.
expansion
Sorry.
Yeah.
issue.
Yeah, and if it wasn't, if it was 50 feet or something, you can move the house 100 feet or something, it wouldn't be, yeah. So is there, and like I say, there's no, I guess the lesson is made for individuals, can between them do something, but there is probably not a way that we can make a condition that, because I personally don't have any problem with granting it, because number one, whatever we do in any particular petition is not a precedent. And even if you make a mistake or anything else, so like you say, well, you did it on this one, you can say, no, that's not how it works. It's not a precedent, and any particular other finding or granting is not a precedent. So each case is individual. However, we do have to find, meet with the law and the findings. And like I say, if the neighbor, and there isn't a way to do this, but I'm opposed to putting any kind of burden on the neighbor that the neighbor would have to do a variance, get a variance, or do anything whatsoever to expand when he had that right before, except for something new coming in. Having said that, do we want to vote? Are there any other questions on finding number one, that's saying it is not in harmony with the intent and purpose of the ordinance? Anyone who wishes to make a motion? And I don't know how to word that. What that's the actual finding number one with the staff comments?
That's
Mr.
correct. That's what I pulled out from the staff report. So
Yeah, I didn't.
but if there is a desire to change the finding, I can provide proposed language based on previous discussions, but it's entirely up to this board what you would like me to add.
Just so people are clear as to what they would be voting on. So I would say, if anyone wishing to make a motion to just, if you can see it on the screen, number one, to read that and make a motion for that, and you can either vote it up or down. But a vote in favor of this would essentially deny the petition.
I guess I'm curious. I'm trying to look at the map here. It says, and Mr. Sanders also said in his paperwork that that was the best way or the only way that his feedlot could go. Is it because he's farming the other portions of his property, or is it lower? Like, how come he can't go in a different direction?
Is that Kelsey talking?
Yeah.
Okay,
Sorry.
yeah. Yeah, I think he probably could go other directions, but he shouldn't be encumbered by something that we allow. I would say his rights should not be restricted in any way, even that he had to put a stamp on an envelope, you know.
Right. I
or
guess
seek a
my
variance or
question
anything.
was
Yeah.
like, he wouldn't technically need a variance if he went in a different direction. He
Well,
would be further away from.
He's bordered by county road on the south and the west. So I mean, he's only can go east or north.
Right.
But that's really not his, that's not his problem. He has a right to expand legally, as the ordinance now reads, you know, any direction he wants. I mean, as long as he meets all the other pollution, et cetera, requirements.
I guess I was just reading it from the variance is not in harmony. It says in there that the existing feedlot would likely need to be in the direction of the proposed new dwelling. I guess I was curious if it actually did need to be that direction, or if that's irrelevant just based on the fact that the 1,000-foot diameter, the house falls within that.
I would say the only practical thing is that there is a manure pit there. And if he was going to expand, he'd probably put a barn, you know, to the east and then, you know, have a runway or a pushway into the pit from that side. So you wouldn't want to establish another new holding area because that's kind of major thing. So practically it really is only can really go to the east. His house is to the north, and so he wouldn't go, you know, near to that. So, but good question. Yeah. I think, I'm going to read, because this is, because the staff is just saying that, you know, but the actual finding is the variance request is in harmony with the intent and purpose of the ordinance. So if we voted on that, that's what we would read. And if you think it isn't, then you vote against it. If you think it is in harmony.
Nope, that's not the case, Mr. Chair. So the staff analysis, it lists out what the criteria has to be in order to grant it, and then provides analysis. And then if you actually read the staff analysis, it does say that it is not in harmony.
Right. But,
and so that's where this finding comes. So if you vote to approve it, then the finding would be is not.
Right. But on page 1 or page 52 of the packet, findings of fact, we're not voting on what the staff is saying, we're voting on what the finding is. And on one, it says the variance request is underlined in harmony with the intent and purpose of the ordinance. And that's what it says we should consider. Is that the way it's written, or is it written as not?
The findings on your screen are the draft findings that were submitted for your consideration, and they say is not.
Oh, okay. So it's not the ones on page 52 that we have to go through.
Page 96.
Yeah, 52 was for the prime soils variance.
Oh, is it? Okay,
Yeah.
but we have another one just like it, right? What page? But the one for the prime soils would be the same, but it's positive. It's not negative. I mean, what is the legal finding? I mean, the legal thing we're supposed to consider.
For this particular docket number, which is docket 05202103, which is the daily feedlot setback variance for your consideration, the draft finding has it as is not in harmony with the intent and purpose of the ordinance.
Okay, and that's one we vote on.
Correct.
Okay.
And Mr. Chair, that's consistent with the staff report, which was then sent to legal for distillation or production of the findings of fact.
All right, because on the other page, when we're supposed to go through the findings separate from the staff, it's listed differently, you know, and I see it's, you know, because even as I'm on the soil, the findings that if we go through one by one, it reads differently. I mean,
So
I understand it for this legally, but just to be clear.
Mr. Chair, the soils are not under discussion at this point.
No, I know that. I know that. It just
Under
happened to be.
staff analysis,
Yeah.
oh, sorry, I didn't mean to talk over you.
Yeah.
Under staff analysis for this one, it states that the variance as proposed appears that it would potentially undermine the intent and purpose of the ordinance because of the 650-foot distance between the dwelling and feedlot operations, parentheses, not in harmony. So that's where legal got that from, and that was under number 1 in the staff report. Thank you.
Okay, but on, what is it, page 92? I'm just wondering, this is just technical business. When we're going through the findings, are we supposed to be going through the ones that the staff has presented or the ones that are written here, the approval criteria? Because on the approval criteria.
The draft findings are the ones for your consideration. The draft findings are based on the approval criteria outlined in the staff report.
Okay.
So you should always base it on the actual findings of fact that were presented for your consideration.
Okay, so there's really no point in including this, the other pages in our packet.
There is, because most of the time, well, a lot of times I copy and paste from the staff report. Sometimes I summarize and distill it down. So there might be additional tidbits in there for your information. They do provide additional information on some of the criteria. So there is a purpose to having them there.
So when we're considering it and I'm reading it, I'm reading the ones that the staff has presented them. On what page is that?
96.
96. I just want to make sure that we're talking about the same thing.
Mr. Chair, on page 92 is where that one is located for the staff report
Right.
under number 1, and that is what I just read to the group.
But
That
the,
was
but the
staff-
findings of fact for consideration start on page 96.
Correct.
Okay. Meanwhile, while I'm looking, does anybody want to make a motion one way or the other and be clear about what but essentially it has to be the one that's on the screen. Number 1.
Yeah.
Correct.
Does anybody want to make a motion to adopt that as written?
Are we just going to talk about number 1, or are we talking about denying or passing?
Just number 1, but if we disapprove of any one finding, we disprove the whole thing. We still have to vote, but.
Right, but
So
I don't know that with the discussions we've had, we both are reluctant to say it, but it isn't in harmony. I mean, we're going to force Mr. Sanders to go and buy a variance in order to expand.
But what would make it in harmony is what I'm wondering, because he could still build a house at 1,000 feet and then he would still need to get a variance.
Yeah, how far away does the house have to be if he wants to expand to that spot?
But isn't that projecting into the future as well?
Yeah, it would have to be the 1,000
Right.
feet plus however far he wanted to expand, which is unknown.
What I was trying to say before is that if individuals want to be cantankerous, Mark Daly can build his house right on 18, right out 1 foot outside the 1,000-foot thing and be legal. And Brian Sanders, if he wants to expand very much east at all, will have to get a variance. And that's all legal according to the thing. So I don't think it's entirely whatever, but we have to come to the point to at least make the motion. As a chair, I can't make the motion. And to either make it and if you make the motion to approve one the way it's written, then you will be denying the request.
I guess I personally don't know at this time how to make it in harmony. If anybody has any ideas, or, I mean, we've kind of been talking about it already, but it seems like we can't really come to any sort of conclusion about that at this time.
Yes,
whether or not we
Kelsey,
want to
yeah.
talking about it, but
No, that's essentially right.
I guess if no one has anything, they could.
You can still discuss
suggest
after you make the
I'm sorry?
motion and it's seconded, we can still discuss item number 1, finding number 1, and this is the legal one. We can still discuss it after the motion is made and seconded. We can still discuss before we vote. So does anybody wish to make a motion?
I can make the motion.
Okay, is that Kelsey?
Yes.
Okay. Make motion to approve the variant, the statement that the variance request is not in harmony with the intent and purpose of the ordinance. Is there a second?
Correct.
Is there a second to the motion?
Second.
Okay. The motion has been made and seconded. Is there any questions or discussion anymore? Okay, hearing none.
Well, I'm sorry.
Go ahead,
I-
Elizabeth.
I just have a, I don't know that we can do anything with this, but I just want to, I guess, reiterate, I would like, my vote would be go back to the drawing board and see what could happen rather than denying it. Maybe we have to deny it to go back to the drawing board, and I'm not sure about that. But I just believe people can come to some kind of reconciliation about how they live together.
Right, but we're stuck with the rules. As in granting the prime soil exception, Mark Daly he doesn't need a CUP or anything. He can build right now anywhere on that 80 acres except in the waterway. I mean, as far as flood things. So
Well, Eric said that there could be other alternatives.
yeah, that's not considered here. So, and the only way we can, and I don't know, Stephanie, can we table this legally?
You could. We may need to extend the 60-day deadline for making a decision, but that is an option to see if any resolution to the issue discussed can be obtained between now and the next meeting.
I like that.
Well,
I'm not saying I don't like that idea, but it still boils down to what Jordan was saying. I mean, let's just say that Mr. Daly can build his house at 1,000 feet. It's still going to trigger a variance for Mr. Sanders down the road.
Yes, and would
we know
that
that?
still be not in harmony with the intent of the ordinance at that point? Even though it's not requiring a variance anymore?
I'm not sure I understand your question, Jordan. I mean, if he builds at 1,000 feet, he wouldn't need a variance.
Right.
Yeah.
But all I'm saying is that still would not prevent Sanders in the future of needing one if they encroached upon that 1,000 feet.
that's right.
But he has a better option not to.
I guess what I'm saying
If
is,
he could work it out, he does, yeah.
I guess what I'm saying is if we denied this variance, number 1 would still remain the same.
Yeah.
I mean, what would need to
Or if you-
change?
Or if you granted it, it would still, it
Well, I mean, part of it, what can be in harmony, as far as I'm concerned, the harmony side of things is the Dalys want to build a homestead on the property they own. And that's in harmony. The part that gets out of harmony is the part where you could trigger the neighbor to get a variance if he wanted to improve his feedlot. Now that's hypothetical. We don't know if he does or not. And I don't know if one person's rights trumps another person's rights.
But it is not in harmony at this point at 650. So that he isn't, if he were 1,000 feet, he'd be in harmony, but he is not within the law at this point.
That
Yeah.
part I don't disagree with you, but all I'm saying is if he goes to 1,000 feet, then that still would trigger a variance for the Sanders down the road. We didn't accomplish anything.
I don't think we know that.
Well, it's all hypothetical. If everybody, and like I said, if Daley wants to build a house just 1 foot past 1,000 on County 18 with the setback required by the county, that will limit how far Brian Sanders can expand to the east from 1,000 feet from that house. And right now we've granted there's nothing other than court can do. So that's accomplished.
But did we accomplish anything? Now we're making Mr. Daley build a house in tillable land.
That's right, but that's the rule. We can, if we want to table this, the motion would have to be withdrawn under agreement by the one making the motion, I believe, and the one seconding it. If we and if we don't want to table it, then we have to vote. So does anybody want to table it? Okay.
Yes.
Well, go ahead.
I have a question.
Yep.
As far as tabling it, in the meantime, we would be hoping that the answer to this number 1 would change to that it is in harmony. So my question is, what would need to change for that to happen?
There's nothing that can be done illegally, essentially. What we need is something that we can't ask for and maybe can't be done because future householders can't be tied by any agreement.
So it wouldn't do
any good.
To table it.
Yep.
Well, wouldn't that give people an opportunity to go back to the drawing board?
But we wouldn't be able to consider that in this petition in the future. It wouldn't make any difference because it wouldn't be binding, according to Stephanie.
That's not entirely what I said. What I said is we
Okay.
can't require them to go do that as part of our petition. If something is addressed outside of this and they come back and there is some kind of an alternative or something in place, that can in fact be considered. We just can't require it preemptively.
Because
That's why I would like to table it and allow people to have the time and opportunity to see if something else can happen.
okay. That's one possibility that then could work. And I'd be in favor of tabling it for that, because I cannot vote for anything that will limit Brian Sanders, to put him on any kind of a thing where he has to get a variance, or even though we already essentially maybe have with the tillable soils or the prime soils, but essentially don't want to require the person that's being imposed on to require them to spend any money or do absolutely anything. So if there is a way for them to make an agreement or something that would be acceptable, as in the future, that would allow us to consider that, and that would be, circumstances that, even though it wouldn't be a precedent, might be, helpful in allowing it to happen, then I'd be in favor of tabling it. But if we want to, we have, what is the rules for withdrawing a motion, Stephanie?
The movement and the second can agree to withdraw the motion.
Okay. All right. Kelsey?
I make a move to withdraw the motion.
Okay, but Kelsey, do you agree?
Yes,
You agree to withdraw the motion?
yes.
Okay. The motion to vote, or the motion to approve the variance request is not in harmony as stated. It has been withdrawn. There are no motions on the table. Does anyone wish to make a motion to table this till the next regular board meeting.
I make a motion to table it until the next board meeting.
Is there a second? Would you second it, Kelsey?
Sure, I second.
Okay. The motion's been made and seconded to table the decision of this petition until the next board meeting, regular board meeting. Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
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 Did everybody say aye? All those opposed say aye. Okay, I'm not sure. Did everyone, well, somebody knows. Essentially, the motion passes. We tabled
Mr.
it.
Chair, I didn't hear anybody say nay.
No,
Maybe
Someone
calling
may-
for nay instead of aye for the opposite
right.
sign
I always
might be
forget.
useful.
Yep.
Thank
in
you.
the future. I guess the only thing you'd have to do is determine if somebody abstained. Okay. What's next on the agenda? Is there anything else, Stephanie, on that we have to do with that petition?
Can I ask one more question?
Yes.
So will there be, it's up to the parties now it's in their court to make a move that would be returned for the next meeting?
That's correct.
That would be my thought, yes.
Okay.
The opportunity to do something.
Right. Right.
Okay. Where are we at? I think we're in a position to adjourn. All those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed say nay, like a horse. Okay, no horses. All right, everyone, thank everyone. for
Thank you.
all this
Thank you. Thank you all. Thanks, staff. Thanks, Stephanie.
Yep.